This episode of The Benefit Whisperer is brought to you by Route 3 Insurance and Financial Services, where smarter benefits begin. If you're tired of rising healthcare costs and opaque insurance contracts, Route 3 is here to help you take control. They specialize in transparent, employer-driven benefit strategies that protect your people and your bottom line. Ready to break away from the status quo? Visit www.fixmybenefitsnow.com and discover how Route 3 can help you build a plan that actually works for your team and for your budget.
Welcome to the Benefit Whisperer podcast with your host, Ralph Weber. Ralph, good to be with you.
Good to be with you too, Bill. Happy New Year. And this is the year, Bill.
We have arrived.
Yeah.
26. Holy smoke. Well,
This
we'll
is
see what
the
it
year-
brings.
this is
We're early
my-
here. We're early here.
Yeah. This is the year that we've got to change healthcare. We've got to fix this thing.
Well, yeah, no, there will be no argument for me. I have been an advocate for changing our healthcare system for a long time.
Mhm.
Fortunately, as you know better than almost anybody I know, it is a complex situation.
Mhm.
A lot of people are ready to talk about reforming things that they don't fully understand.
Exactly.
And so that has been kind of the effort here in the past 3 episodes. This will be episode 4,
Yeah.
looking at the history of healthcare in America. In other words, basically, how did we get here? Where did we come from? And how did we get here?
Mhm.
First episode, we called it How Insurance Ate Healthcare.
Yeah.
The second one was the prices. What? The prices stopped being real. It was really the central theme of
exactly.
episode 2. Episode 3 was about the administrative explosion in anybody who has ever gotten a bill.
Yeah.
Needs no further explanation on that one, man.
Yeah.
So what are we doing in episode 4, Ralph?
Well, episode 4, Bill, and initially this was going to be 3 episodes, but I am a believer that you have to, number one, understand the history, understand the mistakes that you've made
Exactly.
in order to fix it. I see, as a matter of fact, I was just commenting on LinkedIn, Chris Deacon, who was a former guest, she nailed it. She nailed it right on the head. And she said, we can't just keep doing little incremental nudges. They look nice and they move the needle like temporarily, a tiny bit. Long term, we need to just pull it right down, and rebuild it. And that's why in episode 1, I talked about in 1929, why was health insurance initially created?
Mhm.
It was because hospitals were swimming in debt and this was a prepayment. It was that simple. And that worked. What we have now does not work. So we're going to talk today. We're going to get into some really deep answers, and this might even stretch out into 2 podcasts. We'll have to kind of play it by ear. But basically, as I said, something that started as a prepayment system to stabilize the hospitals, it became a whole operating system. Employer tax policies, government programs, managed care, every single layer that was added on that had the intention of improving things, improved the pocketbook of the intermediaries. And, that's
Easy for you to
basically
say,
all
Ralph.
that
Better you than me.
yeah.
So what it boils down to is what I think you need to explain, Ralph,
Okay.
is where does the money go? Because it's a
Well,
lot of money, and where is it going?
Yeah. So number one, it has been designed on purpose to be super complex. Okay. It is opaque
Mhm.
and complex. And a lot of people know some of the issues. A lot of them are not incorrect about them, but understanding the whole picture is hugely important. Any other developed country is paying half or less than we are for healthcare. So why is that? So where's the money going? Well, that is one of the mysteries that we will start to unravel during this episode. But the fact is that the money is going to the intermediaries, the people that have created their little piece of the pie, and the incentives. So there's actually 2 parts of it. Okay. We pay for healthcare price twice. Okay. We pay it twice. Number 1 in complexity, and number 2 in the incentives that are created by this complexity. Okay.
So how do you mean that?
Well, okay. So what that means is we have all of these rules that are supposed to improve things. okay, negotiating powers, pre-authorization, fairness, standardization, et cetera. But each of those brings in an enforcement layer. Okay, so it costs more and more and more, and it's stacked on top, on top, on top. Then providers, and we'll get into this deeper, in a few minutes, it creates an incentive for them to the incentive is not good. The incentive is something, that creates for all parties, employers, employees, providers, everybody, the providers want to be paid fairly and they want to be paid quickly. Employers who inherited this insurance during World War II, as we spoke about with the incentives, they want to have a fair price, and employees don't want to be bankrupted because they need medical care. That's what it boils down to.
No, that is fair. That is fair. But I mean, I know from my own experience and having done stories in the past and speaking with people in the past,
Mhm.
the system unintentionally maybe rewards complexity because it
Unintentionally?
fair.
Everything was intentional.
Okay.
The politicians, you talk about unintended consequences, but were they really unintended? And it could be that some things were unintended, but then all of a sudden, some intermediaries thought, wow, hey, this is really cool. We could make more money with this complexity. We can increase that. When you think about it, Bill, other countries many of them have the same technologies that we do. Same MRI machines, same pharmaceuticals. For the
Yep.
most part, they often use relatively similar guidelines, clinical guidelines, but they don't build a multi-payer reconciliation industry around every single claim. So, and that's what I was talking about, where we pay for the complexity twice. Once in the administrative machinery, really the billing, the coding, the contracting, the compliance, and then again in the behavioral incentives. So yes, care has improved. Okay, now let's talk about technology, Bill, because a lot of people, say, well, we're paying more because it's more complex. Have you ever heard that?
All the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay, technology has improved. There is no question.
There is no doubt. There is
Yeah.
no doubt. I mean, I'm just thinking about it, Ralph. I think about, medical imaging.
Mhm.
I mean, the medical imaging now is astounding. Whether you're talking about ultrasounds or you're
Mhm.
talking about spinal X-rays or anything
Yeah,
else, there's no question that we're light years ahead of where we were even 20 years ago.
absolutely. Yep. And what you can do now with an MRI, CT, ultrasound, you used to have to do exploratory surgery. Let's cut them open and see what's going on. Now they can do it with imaging.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you would think that saves a whole lot of time or
Right.
money and time,
Oh
right?
yeah.
You don't need a couple of surgeons. You don't need, months of weeks or months of recovery time. So shouldn't that be more efficient? Shouldn't that reduce costs? I mean, think about it, Bill. Cell phone technology, has that increased? Has it advanced? Yes. Has it increased costs? No.
No, no. In fact,
Computer,
you made me. It's funny you went there with the cell phone technology because I was just thinking about cell phones and I was thinking about computers and I'm thinking
yeah,
about how much more advanced our computers are today than they were our phones because our
yeah,
phones are computers
yeah,
too. How
right.
much more advanced those devices are, and yet
Mhm.
there is an increasingly there's a market that is competitive in terms of pricing, so that you know. We've got the computers you and I are using right now. We couldn't have bought 20
No,
years ago
no,
for
no,
any amount of money. So it's
no.
astounding.
Yeah, I mean, I think most phones have more computing power than NASA did when they put
Yes.
the first man on the moon.
Oh, yeah. Well, a calculator almost had more
Yeah,
computing power
an
than a
Apple Watch does. Yeah,
exactly. No, it's true.
yeah.
So
At
why hasn't the technological advances I'm just kind of grasping at where you're going to go here because I'm
Mhm,
thinking about all that and everything you just said is absolutely true. So
mhm.
why hasn't that resulted in lower cost and better care?
Well,
Don't do
it's
that then.
you said a word a couple of minutes ago. You used the C word, competition.
Yeah.
Okay. We have competition in computers and phones. I can buy an iPhone, I can buy a Samsung, I could buy 100 other
Right.
phones. They compete against each other. I'm paying myself. Okay. So we have price transparency, et cetera, et cetera. And all of these things we're going to get into. So I don't want to go too deep right now, but
Okay.
we have competition in the, and we talked on the first episode. What is healthcare? Is it the financing mechanism? Is it the treatment? We don't have that same competition in healthcare, and many things have reduced that. There are a lot of things that we don't have, which is why it's more expensive. It's driven up costs. Basically, yeah, definitely care has improved. But the main driver of US spending relative to other structures is the structure of the payment and the insurance, not the existence of modern surgery, modern techniques, modern imaging. It's the billing.
It's the billing.
It's the billing.
It's the billing, stupid. As it were. But explain something to me because I
Uh,
remember during, look, the conversation in quotes around healthcare is not new. This goes back a
mhm.
couple of decades.
Yep.
And,
Mhm.
when President Obama was first elected, he was like, we're going to fix healthcare and we're going to do the Affordable Care Act, the
Yep.
Affordable Care.
Yep.
And, we were presented with the idea that we are going to be able to afford healthcare. We're going to make it affordable. And it strikes me that the ACA has done anything but that, but you would know better than me.
Yeah, you're absolutely true. And I guess that in some cases it made it seem more affordable to some people, okay, through incentives, government incentives. Now, this is not, I mean, even though unfortunately healthcare often is about politics, this isn't even really a political issue.
Mhm.
Um, there are a few things that kind of repeat themselves over and over and again. We talked about the ACA. Okay, what does it do? Well, it provides guaranteed insurance to everybody who wants it, and if they can't afford it, there are incentives. Okay. Now, remember what happened during World War II with a shift to employers paying. Okay. It removed when you buy an iPhone bill, you see the price. When you buy a colonoscopy, even if you saw the price, it's meaningless. Okay. Because number one, you're seeing the list price, not the actual price that's paid. And number two, somebody else is paying for it, a third party payer. So you don't have the same thing. So the third party payment system, that's number one. It weakens what economists call the price signals. Okay. When somebody else pays for the care, they don't act like a typical shopper. The provider, doesn't really have to compete based on a visible price. The result is opacity and prices drift upward. The second thing, standardization. It definitely creates scale, but it also creates bureaucracy. Every time, and I touched on this a couple of minutes ago, every time the system adds a rule to make things fair, okay, eligibility coverage mandates, coding rules, prior authorization, it creates that enforcement layer.
Mhm.
Okay. And that costs money. So every single thing that is supposed to make the pricing more fair, the coverage more fair, more standard, et cetera, you have to enforce that. So we have really created an entire industry of healthcare enforcement, negotiated prices. That's number three. They replaced real pricing. Once you have contracts, you get the charge master price, then the discount. So you have the list price or charge master price, you have the discount, which is a percentage. Then you have the allowable charges or allowed. And then you have the patient responsibility and the plan responsibility, plus what is actually collected and how long it takes to collect that. So it creates departments to manage contracts, denials, collections, et cetera. So the incentive to increase prices too. Incentive to increase prices is very interesting. Insurance turns provider, number one, it turns providers into revenue maximizers under uncertainty. Now, it's one thing to be a revenue maximizer, but there's uncertainty. So when the payment is uncertain, because there are denials, there are not audits, there are
Yeah.
networks, there are tiers, the providers respond by increasing volume because they don't know how much they're going to be paid. So they price it higher. They add more coding intensity, consolidation. We talked about transparency. The ACA forced a lot of consolidation because people could, when I say people, insurance companies, providers couldn't really be efficient without consolidating. So less competition, prices go up. So simply put, insurance didn't just pay for care, it changed to really the entire market into a negotiated, almost a post hoc after the thing is incurred. And we know that by the bills that we get for months and weeks. And that's why costs rose way beyond what medical innovation alone would allow. Does that make sense?
Well, yes, but it doesn't explain to me the very premise of what we started with, the episode 1 in which you reiterated at the top of this episode. If you want to fix
Mhm.
something, you have to know what's broken. We understand that, and this traces throughout the episodes. And for listeners who have not listened to those, when you're done with this episode, go back and listen to those, because there
Mhm.
is a theme that runs through this, and that we've incentivized complexity, we've incentivized process, really, but
Mhm.
basically over healthcare more than
Right.
anything else. Explain to me in the current system. You just did kind of a basic run through there in terms of the intention of the ACA versus
Yeah.
the reality of
Yeah.
the ACA. I've had doctors and administrators tell me that the system is awash in all kinds of billions of dollars, and they deliberately use the word billions of
Mhm.
dollars.
Yes.
There's something broken in here somewhere. And for those of you who have not listened and that don't understand that Ralph gave an example of a cost when he was dealing with a company in a healthcare plan in Tennessee that varied enormously
Yeah.
from low to high. I mean, it's fundamentally broken, Ralph. I mean, that's
Yes.
what I'm trying to get at, and you've made a really good picture of that. But like, give us some understanding. What do we need to know? What do we need to understand if we're
Wow.
going to have an intelligent conversation about fixing this?
Bill, we can't make everybody into an expert. I would love
No.
to.
Well,
I
no,
would
no,
love
what
to.
but a lot of us don't wanna be an expert. We just
No.
kinda wanna understand.
Mhm.
We just kinda wanna have a grasp here, you know? So,
Mhm.
not all of us do. Not all of us wanna have an expert's level of understanding in
Right.
terms of what's wrong with healthcare systems.
Mhm.
You don't have to go down 30 feet. You can
Yeah.
stay on the top there.
A lot of people say, why don't we just go back to cash? If the billing, if the complexity is so complex, wouldn't cash help that? Like, why don't we just cut out insurance completely? Say that's 100% wrong, but we still need insurance, Bill. The insurance is needed for catastrophic events.
Yeah.
Okay. You never know when somebody's going to be diagnosed with cancer, a heart attack, stroke,
Or just get hit by a
NICU.
car.
I'm sorry? Yeah, yeah, hit by a car. Yeah, everything, right? So we need insurance. But the problem is that this insurance is used for routine predictable spending. Okay. And all of the layers are on top of that as well. So think about if your car insurance covered oil changes. Number
Mm,
one, you'd get more. The insurance would pay more, and all of the middlemen would get more, but those price signals would be gone. And that's what I talk about with price signals. And yeah, I want insurance if, God forbid, something really huge should happen. Okay. But by having this coverage for everything, it really created opacity, created administration cost shifting, and everything else. But insurance, health insurance, no longer acts like insurance. I think we talked in the past about how when you buy life insurance, you pay in for decades into this insurance, very small
yeah,
amount. And you don't sit back at the end of the year and say, darn it, I didn't die this year. I wasted all this money, right? We want insurance to cover unpredictable risk that
yeah,
would be catastrophic. But for insurance to work, it has to hold on to your money for years and years so that the insurance companies can make money on the interest. With a medical loss ratio, when they have to spend 80% of your 80 to 85% every year, it doesn't behave like real insurance. In essence, it means the insurance companies have your money for like 14, 15 months, so they have to find other ways to make money.
what do you mean they're required to spend, 80 to 85% of the premium on
The
Medicare medical claims?
Good question. The medical loss ratio, and we talked about during the ACA. The ACA brought for the first time ever a required medical loss ratio. or minimum loss ratio. What that means is in the ACA, it's defined that individuals with health insurance or groups up to 50 employees, the premium, 80% of the premium has to be paid for care. Only 20% can be used for administration, marketing, premium taxes, all
Okay.
that kind of stuff. And we talked about how, do you remember last time we talked about how if the insurance company wanted to reduce the cost in half, then only gives them half as much
Yeah.
for administration and profit, right? So the medical loss ratio said, okay, since we have this, the amount is fixed as a percentage. And guess what? 20% of 100 is less than 20% of 1,000.
No.
Okay. Simple math, right? So if I told you, hey, Bill, I got a great deal for you. I am going to sell you a house at 50% of the asking price. You'd say, wow, that's a
That's
great deal.
great.
Now,
Sure.
50% of the asking price in Beverly Hills is probably more than 50% of the asking price in Minot, North Dakota, right? So when you talk about a percentage, right, you have to understand, because at the end of the day, everybody wants to make a fair living. Some people want to make an unfair living, but these incentives of percentages are not good. They don't help things.
Well, then what do we do about it? Well, I come back to this question all the time, Rafa. I just don't understand what we do about this because it seems the intention of the medical loss ratio
Mhm.
is good,
Yep.
but it doesn't work. So what do we do here?
So many things, to unpack here. Let's get into a different concept here.
Okay.
It's called what I call it is the intermediary economy. We've heard about so many different uses of the word economy, the gig economy where people don't have full-time jobs anymore. This is the intermediary economy. We talked last time. Remember that graph that I talked about where it increased the administrators by 4,800% while the providers about 250%. So the intermediaries are now consuming 30 to 35% of the pie. And that's one thing, okay? But what that creates is you're going to lose so much money, so you start charging more because it's uncertain in a normal economy. Okay. And when everybody says healthcare is different, it is very different. Okay. Because in a normal economy, the buyer, okay, and the payer, they agree on the price. It's
Right.
visible. Okay. You want to buy my old iPhone? I'm upgrading. Here's my old one. Here's how much it is. You know, the stats. We
Sure.
negotiate and everybody knows what they're paying and receiving. And I get the money at the time. That is how the economy works. Now, unfortunately, in healthcare, we don't have that. Instead of having like one or two layers, your money paying to me for my goods, so the layers are number one, the employer dollars, the insurance company or TPA, the network or repricers, the claims clearinghouse, the PBM, pharmacy benefit manager for the drug portion, the utilization management vendors, payment integrity vendors, audit vendors, the provider revenue cycle management. The RCM is a whole industry which wouldn't be needed if this worked as a regular economy. Collections. We have to collect because the employees can't afford this portion, and the collections agencies take a huge chunk. So again, the providers get less. So there's so many, each and every single layer charges fees. They all charge fees. So the higher the prices are, the greater that money is based on a
Right.
percent. So
Yeah.
it's important because number one, each layer adds rules. Rules create work. Work creates admin costs. The system becomes really a monster, this monstrosity that we have built called healthcare. Really, it's growing by itself, kind of like the green blob. They each add rules, they create work, admin costs. So it really becomes an enforcing, because it seems like the easiest way to save money is often to add more management, not simplify the architecture. And that's what we need to do. We need to simplify the architecture. It's that simple.
Well, yeah, because you're talking about a process in which you use the word opacity. It's not opaque. It's a black hole. I mean, you
Yeah.
really
Oh, yeah.
literally can't
Yes.
see through it. I mean,
No.
it's astounding
Mhm.
to me.
Yes.
And all of the alphabet.
Mhm.
I started laughing because it's like it's so complex that the laughter is a defense mechanism because it just makes it even more impossible to understand because we've gotten away from this idea that Bill's sick. He's going to go see his doctor Ralph, and Ralph is going to say, "Hey, Bill, you have this. It's going to cost us, and the visit's going to cost you this much money, and then the drugs that I need to prescribe you're going to cost this much money." And we don't seem to be anywhere near remotely close to that kind of process.
Right. No, no, no. Nowhere near. I think last week I shared with you how a friend needed to try to get treatment. The insurance company denied it, and he was forced to have this tremendous, ridiculous amount that he would obviously would pay. But it's this unknown that the provider has, which is why they stack this on top. Now, they wouldn't have gotten anywhere near that from the insurance company. Nowhere
Right.
near. But it's the uncertainty. So when I say this is an intermediary economy, that's the key
Oh, no,
word. That's
I
the
think it's
takeaway.
understandable. I mean, it's the intermediaries that collect all the money.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I get out of it. It's the insurance companies, it's the administrators, that's where all of the bulk of the money seems to be going.
Mhm.
Correct me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah. You're probably thinking, well, if intermediaries were invented, created, grew to manage complexity, then why don't they just eliminate complexity? Right? I mean, that's
Because the incentive is in the complexity.
exactly. Well, it's in the complexity. The cost is in the complexity, but the incentives that it creates. When you bill me something and you don't know how much you're going to actually get. Well, the old watermelon, analogy where it costs a dollar a watermelon,
Mhm.
and then you go and you buy a watermelon for a dollar, and then you sell it to me for 90 cents to be competitive. And then they say, well, you can always make it up in volume. But that, of course, is not true. So complexity it's not a temporary bug, it's the revenue engine. When the pricing is opaque and the rules are fragmented, intermediaries can sell savings by navigating this mess better than you and I can. And nobody can navigate this mess. It's crazy. So, the businesses that get paid a percentage of the spend or a share of the recoveries, and we talked a lot about this, how when the plan overspends, they will charge you to collect back some of the money that they overspent. Okay. So again, every time spending increases, the pie grows. Okay. So even with good intentions, even with perfect intentions, the incentives often award managing complexity rather than eliminating it. So that's why reforms that add reporting requirements, they always increase costs, and why compliance layers without changing the underlying transaction model also increase the costs.
Yeah, but you can,
Bottom line.
what I could justify this, and it may be a false justification, but I can justify it by saying,
Mhm.
Ralph, if I'm going to give you a bunch of money, I'd like for you to tell me, you know, what it is you're doing, right? So that
Mhm.
it's like I'm increasing the administrative cost because I'm requiring you to report on certain things,
Mhm.
and so that you would think that that would be a fair thing for me to do, not a complicating and certainly not a cost, incurring kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I agree, Bill. If you pay me sort of a consulting fee or a contingency or a
Right.
retainer or whatever, it's reasonable for you to say, okay, I want you to explain what you did, how much
Yeah.
time it took, et cetera. Absolutely fair. But the more you make me report, then I'm going to say, okay, I need so much money let's take the example of a lawyer who will take a retainer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, the more reporting you require, then instead of spending 10 hours litigating or contracting or negotiating, I'm spending 8 hours doing that and 2 hours reporting. Okay. So I'm not getting paid for the reporting. So those $8 I have to charge 10 hours for. Okay. Very
Mhm.
simple example, but it explains it pretty well. And then all of the layers and layers and layers, they're like lasagna. health here we go. Healthcare is like lasagna. You never know what the next layer brings.
Except lasagna's.
Yeah. Well, so is a box of chocolates.
Well, that's true. That's true. Coming off a holiday season, I can attest that boxes of chocolate taste really, really good.
Yep.
Nobody alive doesn't want doctors who are highly skilled, highly trained individuals to not be paid for their time, for their expertise, for all of the things that they do. But it doesn't seem like the money is going there. It seems like all of the money is going somewhere else. So that's fundamentally what I have a problem with.
Yeah. That's the bottom line, Bill. And there's so much more to unpack.
This is a good place to remind people that if you're not a subscriber, hit the follow button, because that way you won't miss another episode.
Yes.
It also remind people that we've done 3 of these prior to this. So that you can go back and listen to them if you have not listened to them while you're waiting for episode 5 to drop, as it were. And Ralph, if anybody who's listening to this is an employer or somebody who's wrestling with healthcare costs, what's the best way for them to get out? Maybe have a conversation with you.
Yeah, it's really important. What I would love for them to do, and every situation is different. I don't have a one size fits all, a one answer will work for everybody type of, scheme, because it's so complicated. So I would love to do no obligation, overview consult for any employer that feels they're spending too much. And if they don't think that having healthcare as the second biggest line item on most reports, they don't think that's unreasonable, then that's fine. But go ahead and give me a call at 832-924-3330 or email me, Ralph at thebenefitwhisperer.com, or just visit fixmybenefitsnow.com and fill out the contact form and schedule an appointment with me. I've got a Calendly link right there, free 15-minute consultation.
Yeah. And if you're an employer, you need no further explanation. You understand exactly what that means, because I don't know a single small business or medium-sized business that hasn't struggled with these costs. They're brutal. They're hard. And there are things you can do without there being a dramatic fix, imminent. So, explore it and see maybe if it's worth your time to do that. So reach out to Ralph and have that conversation. Have that conversation. And until next time, on behalf of Ralph and everybody behind The Benefit Whisperer, I'm Bill Tucker, thanking you for taking the time to listen today, and we'll catch you next time. Episode 5 coming.
There we go. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks.
See you soon.